What's going on, everyone? So I wanted to make a video on this topic of selling properties in a high interest rate environment and whether you should or should not do it in your local market. I'm based in Hamilton, Ontario, and right now I'm seeing clients that are making this consideration for various reasons. I just had a client today that was thinking about making this decision because they're thinking of moving out of province or potentially staying local, but they need to weigh their options and see if it's worth selling now, worth waiting, trying to time the market. And I thought it was important to discuss this because right now we're in a very unique time where we have unprecedented levels of debt in our country. Amongst all the G7 countries, we're one of the highest, and our interest rates have more than doubled. So people are really facing pressures. Now, there's these sort of scenarios where people have financial stress and they need that guidance where they need to sell a property and make the right decision without taking too much of a loss, if any. And there's also people that just have life situations where they need to move, they need to go to a different area, whatever the situation is, and they need to weigh their options because this economy still impacts them as well, especially if they're selling and buying again, right? So I'm going to talk about a couple of things, so just pay attention to these points and it'll give you a better idea on what you should do, what you should consider, and how to approach this. So first and foremost, when I was meeting this client, I needed to understand their purpose. So why are you selling the property? Like, what is the motivation here? And how important is it for you to get from step A to step B, and in how much time? Because if you have a need or a desire and you want to fulfill that, there's going to be a cost that you have attached to that, and you have to be okay with that. And ideally, you want to gain more than you actually lose, right? But it's very subjective. So to everybody, that's different. And in some cases, it's not even about that. It's just you absolutely need to sell because you can't face taking a bigger loss. So nowadays, we're seeing people that are in serious financial stress, and it's becoming more and more common. I speak to these people almost every week. And I can tell you that you need to really think for yourself. You can't pay attention to what people are saying. Don't worry about being judged, because if you have a situation where you absolutely have to sell and you have like high debt levels, you can't afford your mortgage, whatever it is, you need to act faster and move sooner than later because things aren't going to get better, probably not anytime soon. But there might be other situations as well, right? Like I was discussing, where people just need to move, they don't like their area, they don't like their property, or they just want a better option, or they want to be in a different property. And if you're considering selling, just understand like what that means to you, right? Because I can tell you one thing, the common theme I always hear is, what about the timing? Like, when do you think I can get the most amount of money? The reality is when you will get the most amount of money for the sale of your property is also when you will pay the most amount of money for the next purchase that you do. So if you're in that situation, you got to remember that, right? If you sell for more, you're going to buy for more. If rates get cut, your property's values go up, but there's more buyers because now more people qualify for mortgages, more people are okay with stepping into the market, and that's what you got to look at. So timing the market, I would just leave it out. Don't try to do it. People have been trying for decades and it never works. You have to look at kind of like not the timing or the values, but other things like purpose. Like, how important is it for you to move? Would you rather do this now, or would you rather wait 2 years and just not be happy with your life for 2 years? Because I don't know how much that costs to you, but that costs a lot to me, right? So you got to make a decision based on that, because that is what's important, and it's going to be a personal decision. So now let's say you consider all this stuff and you're okay with it, and the answer is yes, you do want to list your property. Now, if you're okay with that, then the next thing is you got to move fast, because here's the thing. The market is shifting every day, every week, every month nowadays. Things keep changing, and whatever plan you have, right? So if you're selling this property and you're buying another property, you probably are going to meet with your real estate professional. Like, for example, I'm in the Hamilton area, so when I'm meeting clients, I let them know, hey, if you sell your property, these are the proceeds you're going to get from the sale of this property, right? This is your net profit that's going to go in your pocket. Okay, so that's what you're gonna base your next move off of. If you're buying another property, if you're moving somewhere, whatever your plan is. So if you don't do that quick enough, then that number could change because the market might change. The property values might drop, or maybe you'll be pleasantly surprised and values will go up, but I don't know how likely that is in the current market. You gotta move fast and just don't try to time things. If you're sure and you've made that decision, then I would get on it as soon as possible, unless you're in a really bad season, like you're in the dead of winter, there's no listings, then maybe you could wait a little bit. Now the real question comes down to, if I do list my property, is it gonna sell? Is it gonna sit on the market? Are people gonna lowball me? All of those things are true. You can absolutely sell your property, and there's a possibility you might sit, and there's a possibility you might get lowballed, but I'm gonna tell you how you can avoid the second two. So it all has to do with how you list your property, how well prepared your listing is, how transparent you are, and how negotiable you are, right? If you make it easy to list the property and you make it easy for the buyer to make that move, then it'll be really easy for you to sell your property. Like if the property has no issues, for example, right? Because if your property has some minor issues, whatever it is, they're gonna come to light because everyone's putting inspections on properties nowadays. So you gotta be very transparent and you gotta address those issues. If you can't, then you wanna speak with your agent about how to work around that, or if there's any options that you have, right? In regards to addressing that. Because if you don't, they will come up and you're gonna have to discount that towards the buyer. Now, that ties into the next thing, which is when your property does have issues, or if it's clear, there's no issues, that's gonna reflect in the listing, in your pictures, in your pricing, everything, right? So if you have the best property in your area that's similar to all the other listings, people are gonna go with yours over the others, especially if you're the best priced, right? And that doesn't mean you need to list low, it just means you need to be reasonably priced, offering the most amount of value, right? So it's the same as if you buy a rotten apple, right, versus a freshly picked apple that's nice and clean, and both weigh the same at the grocery store and they cost the same because they're charging you by the weight. Which one are you gonna go with? It's as simple as that. So you gotta prepare your property and it needs to be listed properly. Now, listing property means number one thing, pricing correctly. If you misprice your property, you're screwing yourself from day one. You can have the worst pictures and the best price and you'll do okay, versus having the most amazing pictures, throwing like a red carpet event. People do all these crazy things on TikTok, but your property won't sell if it's mispriced. So you gotta price it correctly because that's what brings people through the door. And remember, consumers are way more educated. Forget the agents. Like I'm an agent, I can see a lot of stuff you probably can't, but you can probably go on House Sigma, Zolo, all these websites, and you can see what another property sold for. And if you have a decent amount of intelligence, you'll be able to tell if something's overpriced, right? Especially if it's significantly overpriced. So price correctly, because otherwise your property will sit, and that's one thing you do not want in this market. Because if a property sits in this market and you end up in the winter season with a property that's sitting, you're gonna get lowballed and it's really tough to deal with. The next thing is the pricing strategy. So are you listing below asking? Are you holding offers? All that stuff. So a lot of this is gonna come from reviewing the listing. So your agent or real estate professional should review the comparable sales, the active listings on the market, and look at the strategies that all of them have done and what has and has not worked. And that's how they should be determining what you should do for your property. One of the most important things nowadays is marketing, right? So the person you work with, if it's a real estate professional, they need to be amazing with digital marketing and advertising, right? And that doesn't have to necessarily be digital. It could even be just through like their network, whatever it is, but marketing is like key. And nowadays, most of it is online. Most buyers come to your property by viewing it online. I've had people that are more than 70 years old come to an open house by going to realtor.ca. So that should tell you something about where people are coming from. So getting in front of those people and presenting your property in the best way, I'm talking professional photography, virtual tours, and staging if necessary, is showing the best version of your property, and that's what brings people through the door. The more people that come through the door, the more potential offers you have. The more potential offers you have, the better price you'll probably get. So that's what you got to work with. Now, be aware of seasonality. So there are seasons, like I said, the winter is the slowest, spring is probably the best time, and that can vary. Like we saw that in COVID, the craziest months were sometimes in the winter, but nowadays we're in a more balanced market, I would say, and the winters are the slowest months. So depending on when you're listing your property, you got to understand. And again, you might not have control over this because maybe you have a mandatory need to sell the property, but just understand what comes with it, right? And that leads me to the next point, be negotiable. So people are going to throw conditions on your property when they're offering, and having an offer than no offer is always better. And your real estate agent can explain why, but if you have conditions being thrown on the property, don't just automatically say no. This is not like 2021 peak market where everyone's buying properties sight unseen. So you got to take what you're getting. And I'm not saying just give away your property or lose money, but if someone's offering you a reasonable price in consideration of everything that's going on and they're making fair arguments, be receptive to that. And you'd rather sell your property there, especially if you have better use for that money or you need that money, than hold on to it and not take an offer. Because if you're in that situation, you're probably not getting very many offers to begin with. So just be negotiable, and this all comes down to setting expectations. So you and your agent should understand what is going to happen and kind of the best and worst case scenarios. And often agents don't do this because honestly, sometimes it is their fault. They just tell you what you want to hear. And sometimes people are just very stubborn. Sometimes people deal with family members or relatives, so they can't be frank with each other. And it creates this recipe for disaster where you have this property that's listed wrong or at the wrong price, and now it's sitting, right? So just be willing to take that sort of criticism up front, and then it'll be a lot easier to deal with later on. And you want that honesty, because if you don't get it and you're one of those people who apparently there's a lot of even nowadays where I'm not selling unless I get X amount, you're going to be severely disappointed unless that X amount is a very fair price, which often it's not. So consider all these things if you are looking to sell. And more than anything, if there's one thing you should take away from everything I said, you need to deal with the local professional. If you're looking in the Hamilton area or surrounding areas, reach out to me. This is exactly everything I look at when I'm listing a property or looking at trends or whatever it is. Even when I'm offering on properties, I look at this stuff because these are the core things that you need to kind of base your offer and your listing price off of, whether you're buying or selling. And this is what everyone else looks at. So if you don't understand this stuff and you just want to hear what you want to hear and you have false expectations, you're going to get disappointed. So work with a local expert who understands all this stuff about your market, and reach out to me if you're looking in this area, right? I'll leave my contact info below. I'll also leave the Hamilton investment guide down below, and I look forward to talking to you guys.